Hey guys, it is another week here, and we're going to delve right into what happened this week in WWE Wrestling. Um, both Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. So we'll just jump right into it. We have the start of Monday Night Raw set up the main event, and that was between Seth Rollins and Damian Priest. Some of this also started planting seeds for what could potentially end up happening with the Judgment Day, with Damian starting to show respect for Seth and what he's done, and Finn not necessarily appreciating this as much. So we'll see exactly where all of that leads. But it is one of those long-term storytelling things that they like to do, that you really have to pay attention to. Otherwise, you don't necessarily notice them, and they don't make sense later. Then we had Becky Lynch and Sonya Deville facing off. This was a qualifying match. Chelsea Green was at ringside with Sonya. That did not end up helping Sonya anyway. Becky ends up picking the victory and is going on to Money in the Bank. I don't remember how many she's been in now. I think it's like 3 or 4, something like that. We'll go. I'm gonna do a video later once we have all of the competitors for both the men's and the women's ready, and I'll kind of go through how much of a chance I really feel like all of these people really have of being the one that comes out on top in this. But now we know another person that will be in the women's Money in the Bank match. Okay, we then had Kevin Owens and Gunther. This interaction between Sami and Kevin and the Imperium, along with the added benefit of her, I like it. I don't know where exactly it's gonna lead, but it's fun to see them going back and forth. Gunther ended up picking up the victory in that match, but that's okay. I don't think it hurts him. I don't think it hurts Kevin, really. Okay, we then had Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler taking on Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. They are fairly new from NXT. This is kind of a fun way to get them involved in the show. This, I don't believe this was a championship match. No, it was not. So it was a fun way to get this new tag team on the card, get people to kind of get used to them. At the end of the day, getting them in the ring, on the screen, really is the only way to get people to be able to connect with a new superstar. So, Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey pick up the victory there. Not surprising. We then have Ricochet versus Shinsuke. These two have both qualified for the Money in the Bank ladder match. So this is just kind of a fun the match between the two of them. Nothing necessarily at stake. It did end up in a no contest because Bronson Reed came out and he attacked both of them. This does not necessarily mean anything per se. I don't remember if Bronson Reed, I don't know that he has had a qualifying match just yet. So I don't know where exactly this leads. If he has had his match and did win, then that kind of adds to fuel to that as to why he would get involved there. Then we had Ms. TV with Cody Rhodes. Then he had the surprise guest of Dominic Mysterio, who of course came out with Rhea Ripley. And that has been kind of a fun exchange between Dominic, Rhea, and Cody. And I don't know that this is... So this may be where Cody moves on to, is something with Dominic. But I'm pretty sure that before that can happen, he first needs to end things with Brock. I do believe we are going to get one more match with Cody and Brock. That they're not going to leave it 1-to-1. But this at least starts to get that lined up for what is going to happen after Brock Lesnar. And they're doing it in kind of a more organic way instead of just out of the blue somehow Dominic has an issue with him, right? They're kind of setting up that issue here. And that next feud could end up being with Miz as well. Which would be okay too. Because that would be a fun little feud to see, Cody and Miz. Alright, then we had another qualifying match for Money in the Bank. We had Zoe Stark and Natalya. Zoe Stark picked up the victory here, which is okay. Natalya has been in a few of them, and she has done well in them. And she's experienced in that kind of thing. But I think she's also at that point where I don't know if Natalya would be one of my top picks. If that makes sense. She's talented. She's very good at getting people over. But I don't know that the story is ever going to necessarily be about her. You know, typically each year when we go into Money in the Bank, when we go into the Royal Rumble, there is usually someone that has kind of been highlighted, if you will, right? And that person is going to be the one that's going to end up being pushed. And that person is going to be the one that's probably going to be the one that ends up coming out winning. And I don't know if that's going to happen with Natalya. I think she's kind of past that. Will she help get that person that's is the story, that is the one that they're pushing over? Yes. She will certainly do that. She will do that really well. The other piece of this is that Zoe was not out there alone. She had Trish Stratus with her. They've kind of become a team, if you will, sort of. We then end up getting our main event. But before we go into that, we had Indashir out there too, and I guess they were supposed to be taking on Cedric and Shelton. Um, but they attacked them before it could actually start. Again, and I said this last week, Indus doesn't do anything for me. I am not really connecting to them in any way. And usually I cannot like someone because they're heel, and yet still be able to at least connect to their character. And I just, nothing. Maybe eventually they will, but for right now, not really. Then we got our main event, because that match never happened. Priest did come out alone, so Balor was not there. It was a good match, very back and forth. Either one of them, I think, could have won. Either one of them could have won in this, right? Seth Rollins did end up picking up the victory. I did wonder about this because I wasn't sure what kind of role Finn was going to play. So that dynamic changed when he didn't end up coming out. I liked that they added in this play with Damian agreeing to essentially shake Rollins' hand and offer that respect. And Finn, the look on his face, because he did come out to the ramp afterwards, was not thrilled. He really... He wasn't. So that is also that part that makes you wonder, what are they planning for the future of Judgment Day? Because I think it's pretty clear that eventually it is going to end, and they're starting to plant those seeds for that. So we're going to go ahead and move on to SmackDown. So they recapped the celebration, Roman Reigns' 1,000 days as champion. Then they bring Jey Uso out, and that is when Paul announces that they are going to give him this title match against the United States champion Austin Theory. And they're enticing Jey by essentially telling him that Roman has selected him as the next tribal chief. This continues that whole story that they've been telling with this, which has been very intriguing. Jey accepts the title match. He's all for that. But as far as being Roman's right-hand man, he needs to consider that. So he will not shake Paul Heyman's hand on that part of the deal just yet. We'll get more on that later too, when Paul and him talk in the locker room before the United States Championship match, which we do get. We then get a qualified match with Mustafa Ali and Santos Escobar. That was a fun match. You have two high flyers that really kind of get around the ring. It was kind of fun because we did end up also getting LA Knight on commentary, who has already qualified. Santos Escobar ends up picking up the win. I don't know where this necessarily leaves Ali, who they have been somewhat pushing and who has gotten a lot of wins with Escobar qualifying for Money in the Bank, and we've already seen Zelina Vega qualify. There was a thing backstage, and I want to say that was last week, with the whole of LWO, and them saying, you know, Escobar's going to win the men's, Zelina's going to win the women's. We're going to bring both of those briefcases to the LWO. We're going to win when we cash those in. I don't know if that's necessarily where they're going. I don't know if that's the story this year. Well, part of me wouldn't hate it. I don't think it's where they're going. As much as I like Escobar and Zelina, I don't know that's where they're going with that this year. But we'll have to see when we still get a couple of more entrants. We then had Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, who are the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. And I wondered about why they had not done anything with this on NXT. And that question gets answered here. Ronda and Shayna want to unify those tag team titles, which is how it was set up in the beginning. Because there really wasn't enough tag teams necessarily to have them individual. That it made sense to have one tag team championship for all of them. So that is what they are going to go back to. I do not know exactly when they have that. It hasn't been set up yet, but it is official. Isla Dawn and Alba Fire accepted that unification match. So that'll be fun. That means that those tag titles will now be able to go back to NXT occasionally. That'll be fun. I like that idea. They did do a video package for the Iron Sheik, which I thought was really nice. He was one of the best heels at the time. And I wasn't watching at that time, but just the general feel, it was kind of the perfect character for him to be that perfect heel, and he did it really well. So that he will definitely be missed. And they did a very nice job with that package to remember him. We then did end up getting Bayley versus Michin Mia Yim. That was a fun match. It was okay. Bayley ends up picking up the victory there. I don't know where... I don't know how I feel about... We'll get into that later after the second qualifying match there, because we haven't gotten into that yet. So with Bayley being there, Michin there, AJ Styles was out there with Michin, and they're planting those seeds again between Karrion Kross and AJ Styles now. With Scarlett, she blows some red smoke into AJ's face, which is really kind of I don't know. I like the play with the mist, both from Scarlett and Asuka, and it gets Scarlett more involved in that feud for Karrion. I think what this is going, because this leads them backstage now too, and Mia Yim is all about getting back at Scarlett. So I want to say what we are going to end up getting is maybe that mixed tag match with Scarlett and Karrion against AJ and Mia Yim, which would be a fun match. I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. It would be a mixed tag match that had nothing to do with any kind of titles. It builds a story. Okay, let's talk about this new Women's Championship title. It looks nice, do not get me wrong, but it makes me question, what is their plan for the other one? Now, I get they had to do something, but what... It leaves questions as to what they're going to end up doing for Rhea, which we should get answered tomorrow night on Raw. I just don't know what really to expect. They did just give Seth a new one, so maybe it's somewhat kind of along the lines of that new one, because this one was more of that gold color, like Roman's. I don't hate it, and it's a better idea than just swapping the titles, right? Then Charlotte comes out. And I don't really know how I feel about that yet. And as much as I don't necessarily care for Charlotte also getting title opportunities, I really liked that line where she says, "I don't get in line, I made the line." Now, here's the thing. Charlotte is talented, right? No question about it. She is. I think the part that bothers me more about all of the opportunities that she gets and all of that is that it somewhat makes people think somehow, or that she thinks maybe that others are not working that hard too. And at the end of the day, she is not the only one that is putting in that time to do what they can to improve themselves. Because they are. So that is what we're getting. We do not know when exactly, but we will be getting Charlotte versus Asuka, because Asuka did accept the challenge. We'll see when they end up setting that for, but I don't necessarily hate it. I don't know exactly whether she's coming back as more of a heel or baby face in this. Asuka being more of the heel right now, they could still be keeping Charlotte in that baby face role. We'll see what happens there. Okay, so we're going to go back to Jay and Paul in the locker room. This is more of that discussion of him being that next in line to be the tribal chief. He shakes Paul Heyman's hand, reminds him that, I don't know why you're so happy, because when I win the United States Championship and I bring this family back together, you're out. It's just going to be us, the family. You're not blood. You don't belong here. The four of us were doing great before you got involved. Four of us will be fine with you gone. We don't see much about what goes on from there and Paul's reaction necessarily to that. Okay, so later in the show, we do get that scheduled, and it will take place on the Go Home show for Money in the Bank. We'll see what ends up happening there, going into Money in the Bank. I don't know how I feel about them doing that just prior to it, Um, because if you take that title off of Asuka, just going into Money in the Bank, that leaves Asuka completely off of the card, because then she doesn't have the opportunity then to get into the Money in the Bank match, as theoretically, by the Go Home show, that ladder match should be set. We'll have to think about that a little bit more. Yeah. So, Baron Corbin is going to be coming out for a qualifying match. And he does. And Pete Dunne is already out there. That's who he's going up against. Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams are in the front row. Now, for anyone that has watched NXT, you know that with Corbin being a free agent, he made his presence known there on NXT. So this was kind of fun, as they got a couple of hits in before that could even start. So that was just kind of a fun little segment there, that it lets people begin to see Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams and kind of introduces you to them. While crossing things over a little bit, which I like it a little bit. I do. I think it's time to start seeing that trickling of some of those NXT stars coming in when it makes sense. Right? And this makes sense. It makes sense to have Baron Corbin go over there and kind of be that go-between, because he is a free agent. So, Butch, otherwise known as Pete Dunne, or Pete Dunne known as Butch, whichever you want to think of it as, he picks up the victory, and he will be going on to Money in the Bank. So that's kind of fun. So the whole thing with Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes comes up after the actual match. So they don't intervene in the match itself, right? So that was kind of fun to have that. We then have Io Sky and Shotzi in their qualifying match. This was a good back and forth match. It was fun. Io Sky ends up picking up the victory. I don't know how I feel about both Io Sky and Bayley being in this. So let's talk a little bit about this, because Bayley has won Money in the Bank already once. So I don't see her winning this again. I would not necessarily hate for Io Sky to win this. She could be. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that would be fun to have her end up being the winner in that. And what that could mean for Damage Control. We'll talk about that when I do that video later, once we have all of the participants figured out, right? Because I want to save that discussion for that. I really do. Because I think it would be fun, and I don't want to reiterate something there. So, so we have tag team stuff, then going on. And I think we will end up getting we are going to get a gauntlet match. So we had Pretty Deadly. We had Sheamus and Ridge Holland. The OC, so that's going to be Carl Anderson and I don't know why I'm forgetting his name. At any rate, the LWO and the Street Profits, they're all chatting about this. So it makes for that perfect storm, and Adam Pearce comes out and wonders what's going on. That's when they put out this gauntlet match for next week, and I think that's going to be fun. I think it's kind of the perfect way to really determine who that next contender is going to be for the tag titles. It's going to get them all on the card and showcase them. Luke Gallows, that's the name I'm looking for. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, the OC. There we go. Oh, so we're going to get that next week, and that's going to be fun. And I think they went about that right in setting it up. We got a hype video for Grayson Waller. I think we kind of maybe needed to do that a little bit. He's good on the mic, and I think he's going to be fine. He's connecting with the crowd. We then have the main event. Austin Theory versus Jey Uso. This one gets interesting. Okay, because Austin Theory has kind of made friends with Pretty Deadly. And Pretty Deadly comes out and makes themselves known to Jey Uso. Right? And I don't remember if that was after Jimmy came out. I don't think Jimmy was out there just yet. Yes, he was not. So Jimmy comes out to help his brother against Pretty Deadly. End of story. Austin Theory ends up winning, retaining his title. Partly because Jimmy accidentally super kicks Jey. I don't know for sure where this leaves us, because Jimmy does end up getting attacked then by Solo. Then him and Paul Heyman leave, or start walking away at any rate. You can't really tell 100% how Jey is feeling about this. He kind of shoves him away, but I don't know that that necessarily means that he doesn't understand what his brother was trying to do. I feel like he understands that it was an accident. He kind of pushes Heyman away too as he's trying to apologize. We'll have to wait until next week to see exactly what the ramifications of this is and how the brothers end up getting through that. Because I don't know where that leads them. I feel like Jey understood that it was an accident and definitely not on purpose. But he could still be frustrated that he felt like he needed to get involved at all. And should have just let him do his own thing. We'll have to wait and see, but that is part of the reason that I like this storyline, is that it leaves you with that cliffhanger, that you need to come back that next week to see what happens. Alright, and that is this week Raw and Smackdown, as we get closer to Money in the Bank, and that card, or that those two matches start to fill up both on the men's side and the women's side. And within the next week or two, I should be able to start putting that video together for you guys as to how I feel about each of those participants and their chances of walking out the victory both for the men's and the women's. Alright, guys. Don't forget to leave a like and let me know if you have any comments, whether you agree, disagree on any of these things, or if I missed something. Okay? Alright. See you guys next week.